Hello everyone. Today I will share with you my project Corridor that I designed as a practical component of my PhD dissertation research, Designed Experience and the Logics of Environments. Corridor is a paper prototype of a public transportation game. I explore and question urban survival through ecological thinking to open the discussion of how to coexist and collaborate in urban environments for more livable futures through the ethics of responsibility and moving together. Precisely, I am discussing survival in urban contexts because it is productive to think about how urbanity has been building and governing logics of being in the world, especially in Western cultures. What I do in my research is to point out a shift in human perception and a change in a habit of thinking, a Laperoutian practice of habit change, regarding these terms of urbanity, survival, and ecological thinking that with the help of gameplay. The workshop, listening to passengers, listening to stories, interactive storytelling that I cooperated last year's IFM conference helped me to conceptualize Corridor in a great extent. During the workshop, the participants from different regions of the world, including Edinburgh, New Delhi, Allen, Brooklyn, Dallas, Toronto, Tehran, and Istanbul shared their stories shaped by compulsory encounters in public transportation as a physically limiting and politically controlled space that affected their motivational and emotional states. Delving into the methods or tactics of survival of body in public transportation systems of different cities, the workshop was a call for play that will challenge, influence, and change everyday life interactions and social relations in public transportation. My intention was creating a space for expression and recognizing everyday superpowers in shared public environments with critical thinking and practice-based research in the fields of digital humanities, arts, technology, and emerging communication studies. I consider public transportation as a designed experience. Designed experience is a mode of decision-making that fosters depictions, statements, and understandings of the ways of being in the world. In an urban context, public transportation is a two-sided coin as it both creates the urbanity and it's created for the maintenance of the urban areas. The designed experience of public transportation is related to a logic of moving together. Transportation is a state of being on the move. It is a trip or a journey. It is a migration that for many happens daily. For me, moving together as a key framework for being in the world explains interdependency or interconnectedness that is being responsible for the other as the other. Ultimately, I reveal how designed experience can be helpful to understand moving together as coexistence through feminist responsibility. For feminist theorist Karen Barad, responsibility is a matter of recognizing the interdependence and entanglements of all living things in the world. Accordingly, moving together can help finding the ways of how to survive in ecological emergencies by prioritizing sustainability, especially social and environmental justice, by collaborating and being attentive to each inhabitant's situations. At this point, I turn to ecological thinking. In the book The Ecological Thought, Timothy Morton argues that ecological thought understands that there was never an authentic world, no absolute center or edge that living beings adapted. For Morton, the term environment as a single entity still undergoes a holistic view to defend the status quo. However, there are environments constituted by forms of life, living or non-living. Accordingly, Morton utilizes the word mesh to articulate how distinct organisms coexist in one environment. Therefore, ecology is imagining how to live together or precisely how to move together. Fundamentally, ecological thought is about movement because it is about dislocation, in Morton's words, wandering from place to place, open to random encounters. The players, or commuters of Corridor, struggle to survive in this context, maintain their energy and safety while encountering enemies or allies during their journey in a collaborative play. Here, survival needs to be understood through collaborative engagements as an awareness of living and moving together. Based on my observations, thinking of public transportation as corridor supports mobility and building connections, fostering a narrow path that forces encounters between commuters. Consequently, corridor becomes a critical tool, a corridor of encounters, forging contact zones for urban survival to rethink surviving in an urban context. In the making of Corridor, the outcomes of the workshop and my observations and experiences on different public transportation systems, including buses, trains, and metros in several countries worldwide, inspired me to build a correlation between a trip in public transportation and urban survival. Urban survival is a struggle of staying alive in an urban context under challenging situations, including natural disasters, pandemics, and wars that eventually eliminate the imaginary divide between humans and nature. Under the contemporary regime, urban survival can be related to daily repetitive works causing stress and anxiety, as well as worries connected to such fears as losing job, failing school, and social interactions. Hence, safety and energy becomes questions to address in urban areas and introduce new modes of survival struggles for all living beings. The goal of the game is to go as many train stations as desired by keeping energy and safety meters between 1 and 0 collectively. To do this, players move together to explore how social interaction, interdependency, kindness, camaraderie, and responsibility encourage players to survive collaboratively, being implicated in the logics of environments and moving together. Each interaction between the players opens corridors of connection during the journey. For each round, each player draws either an encounter or an item card. Encounter cards give unique instances that affect the player's common energy and safety meters either positively or negatively. With each encounter card, there is also the option to roll a die to see if the negative effect can be reduced. The die could also increase the negative effects of the encounter card. For every encounter card, with a few exceptions, there is an item card that can be used to avoid the negative effects on the energy and safety meters. The players will have to choose if they want to face the situation on their own by rolling the die, or if they would like to try their luck by counting on the kindness of strangers. In that way, one player is actively engaging the other player's situation. By exchanging items, the players aim to keep the energy and safety meter above 1 collectively. This means that, as the next stage is always an unexpected encounter, randomness, plurality, mobility, differentiation, and cooperation, we need to foster atonement for care and collaboration. The game ends when there are no more cards on the decks. Unlike traditional games, I take a critical approach by eliminating the losing and winning conditions. If both meters reach 1, the players keep moving together to increase their conditions. Maintaining the levels of energy and safety collectively is about feeling hopeful in corridor to continue the trip. Here, hope appears as a primary subject matter to comment on survival in an urban context, highlighting contemporary anxieties of urban life, again, such as stress, worry, labor, and environmental emergencies. Public transportation can be a metaphor for the logics of environments that are plural. By building nodes and connecting commuters who aim to survive in everyday struggles, public transportation prioritizes the notion of moving together. In that way, corridor becomes a reimagination of a technological object, with philosopher Bruno Latour's reading of Aramis, which was a model for personal rapid transit, as a living being that might think, speak, desire, and count as political agents to comment on social happenings. In designing Corridor, I built on my personal experiences in public transportation systems In the strength role-playing, the characters of the game or the regular commuters stand for a student, a tourist, an officer, and an athlete, come from the workshop participants and my experiences as a commuter in transportation. Based on several playtests, I consider Corridor as a conversation starter too. I utilize experimental game design methodology, which is a field of interactive arts that introduces new forms and contexts for play. The experimental game design as a methodology encourages to push boundaries and expand knowledge in the field. Moreover, like the experiments in sciences, experimental game design is crucial as a failed game can inform the field as much as a successful one, though the definitions of success and failure are more fluid. Experimental designs reveal the significance of experiments as they are inherently artificial constructions that nudge and modulate reality's constellation of potentials in ways that allow for the observation that would have been otherwise impossible, says game scholar Patrick Jagoda. Of course, game-like media presents the most opportunities to build relationships between real-world encounters and fiction. Like the experimental game design, the play-centric approach, referring to Trace Fullerton, fosters iterative game design that tests the gameplay several times, and most importantly, it encourages thinking beyond the existing genres. With this game experience, I foster several questions. When do you find yourself engaging with others in public transportation? What happens? What would be the consequences of helping strangers if their struggles also affect your energy and safety? Helping strangers means recognizing the familiarities between two distinct entities, such as the self and the other. Being attentive to each other's conditions fosters coexisting, the logics of environments in the plural sense. Eventually, I turned to play and design a game-like experience because I aim to underline that play as being in the world. In the words of game scholar Miguel Sicard, playing is a form of understanding what surrounds us and who we are and a way of engaging with others. Play can be one of the ways of applying the logics of environments and moving together in everyday life. This is an invitation to be aware of pluralities, while moving together in mutual relationships, collaboration, coexistence, and responsibility. As a future direction, I plan on questioning how arts and humanities intervene in the logics of environments. In this effort, I follow designer-educator Bruce Mo's principles for designing massive change, including designing the difference, not the object, scaling for impact, and designing what do you do to tell your story. Using visual culture studies and environmental humanities, I aim to expand my commentary on urban design, to think differently, to think ecologically, to indicate that struggle for existence is a simple dependence of one being on another. Precisely, it's moving together. I thank the conference organizers for inviting me to report back on Corridor. I should add that I am thinking about how the project might inform a broader practice of and thinking about sustainability and survival in urban spaces. How might game-oriented design experiences invite us to inhabit urban environments differently? In this regard, I am pursuing installation projects in museums or other cultural contexts and community spaces, as well as development of an interactive, perhaps multiplayer game. I am already in conversation with an independent game developer, and hopefully I aim to present it at next year's conference. Thank you so much for listening, and now we can have time for questions. In here, I'm also sharing credits, and you can also see references that I was using. Thank you so much again.